What are some of the worst trades that you've seen in fantasy football this year? That's what we're talking about for the Week 11 edition of the Fantasy Football Survival Kit. And I will be honest with you people, right off the bat here. I suck at trading. I rarely ever do it. And do you want to know why? I'm terrified of stuff like this happening. I'm terrified of getting hosed. I'm terrified of suffering some really bad trade luck. So usually I just don't do it. I don't make any roster moves and then my teams sink into the oblivion. So I respect you all for trying. Instead of me making any moves, I'm just going to sit here and judge in my ivory tower all of your really, really bad trades. And let me just tell you, some not safe for work content in here because it involves some straight up slaughterings that we're going to cover today. Let's get into it. This one comes in from @BRB Shop, very adorable. They say the commissioner invited his teenage son into their office league, then convinced him to trade Patrick Mahomes for Kenyon Drake. Holy hell, talk about dad of the year. I mean, you bring your son into an office league and then you embarrass him publicly by making him trade you Patrick Mahomes for Kenyon Drake, a guy who is only basically usable one time this entire year. Your son is going to have issues for the rest of his life because of this awful, hideous thing that you did to him in a public fashion. My God, man. And you're the commissioner of the league too. I think you have gone drunk with power, Dad. Next. This one comes in from @Steven Serda. A guy in my longest running league traded Darren Waller for Kerryon Johnson the day before Kerryon Johnson got put on IR. I cannot fathom taking Darren Waller, a guy drafted in all these leagues, and then you want to take him and trade him for a running back that gets thrown on IR the next day? How does that not eat you up inside? How does that not make you feel dead? I don't even know how you're playing fantasy football after this. Well, you're playing, but you're definitely losing because you traded for a running back who's not going to play the rest of the year. Next. And now we're entering a section of the program I will title Antonio Brown. And this one's gonna hurt, so buckle up. This first one comes in from @JeremyNYKCover456. They say, I traded Michael Thomas for Antonio Brown and Joe Mixon. Name one worse. The real punch in the gut here, not just that you gave up Michael Thomas for Antonio Brown. You thought you were at least getting a starting running back back, right? You know, a guy that is going to be an RB2, gets a lot of volume. No, not only did you get one completely worthless asset for Michael Thomas, you got one worthless asset who still has to look you in the face every day on your roster, which is deteriorating before your very eyes. Next. This one comes in from @BigNizo. I traded Devin Singletary and Cortland Sutton for Antonio Brown. Could you imagine? Back in the preseason, if you said, I'm gonna trade a rookie in a Bills backfield committee and a receiver on a Joe Flacco-led offense for the best receiver in the NFL, a future Hall of Famer in Antonio Brown, you'd have been doing victory laps from California to damn Virginia. Life comes at you fast. It came at you very fast because it ended the moment you traded for Antonio Brown. Next. This one comes in from @LShort1973. I traded Chris Godwin, Leonard Fournette, and Keenan Allen for Antonio Brown and Alvin Kamara. SMFH FML. Yeah, F your L, buddy, because not only did you trade for Antonio Brown, who is off the planet at this point, you got Alvin Kamara, who has been mostly underwhelming. When he hasn't been hurt, he's been underperforming with Teddy Bridgewater behind center. So yeah, your fantasy team is pretty much in the tank. I would say maybe take next year off. Next. This next one comes in from @OJ Inglay. Someone in my dynasty league traded Antonio Brown for Aaron Jones. After the New England deal, of course. Aaron Jones is what, like the third, fourth, fifth best at worst running back in fantasy football right now, behind like Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey. There's probably no one else that you would rather have. And Antonio Brown is, he's on Twitter, which is the same place you're on. Yeah, I don't think this one worked out for you. Next. All right, that's enough of Antonio Brown. Let's move on to the rest of the NFL. This one comes in from @Mike Honcho. I traded Mark Ingram for Adam Thielen right before the Kansas City game. Started him right away and got the 0 and lost by 2 points. That's brutal. I mean, what are you gonna do, right? Well, probably don't trade for injured players. Even if the news is positive, you know coaches lie all the time. The problem for you now is you're never gonna be able to look Adam Thielen in the eyes ever again, because all you'll see is just two pupils formed into zeros, and that's all you'll remember him as next. This one comes in from @NickGluciano. I don't even know if that's correct, but I definitely know this trade wasn't correct, and so do you. This was literally last week, and you're livid about it. Austin Eckler, Ronald Jones, DJ Moore for Christian McCaffrey. Hey, let me tell you something. 3 is not greater than 1. I know how math works, but my point in this is you get a side with 3 assets here and you get 1 over here. Doesn't mean that the one side is not better than 3 of lesser things. Are you following me yet? Guys like Austin Eckler, Ronald Jones, DJ Moore, they pop up every now and again, and they're not going to make the difference for your fantasy team, especially here at the end of the season. So to review, our math lesson of the day, 3 is not greater than 1. Next. This one comes in from @MarkissMyBalls, very aggressive name here. I traded away Russell Wilson for Dak Prescott after 2 weeks. I traded away Julio Jones for Juju before Ben Roethlisberger went down. And I traded away Cooper Kupp for Marquise Brown. I think I'm noticing a common denominator here. In all of these trades, you are the common denominator. You're the one who keeps making them. I think you might be the problem. So I would suggest maybe like sitting on your hands and just avoiding the trade block altogether, because you can't help yourself from sinking your own team. Next. This one comes in from @RonLeibs. Somebody traded Saquon Barkley straight up for David Johnson less than 24 hours after the draft had completed. I gotta say, I don't understand you people at all. Bro, you just did the draft. Like, sit on the team for a while. Let it marinate. Just be settled. Don't be so antsy. I mean, I don't understand all this need to trade. Like, are you just that fidgety? Just sit down for a while, be calm, and like relax. Enjoy the team for a little bit. Let the guys come together. Let the chemistry in the locker room of your fake team become more settled before you start disrupting it. Jeez. Next. This one comes in from @CarlosRobles415. A guy in my league traded Aaron Jones for DeSean Jackson after week 1. There's always one guy like this who takes one of their 2nd or 3rd round picks and deals them for some guy who pops in week 1. What do you think this person in Carlos' league was thinking about as he watched Aaron Jones punch in 3 touchdowns while looking at DeSean Jackson on his waiver wire because he's not going to play pretty much the rest of the year? I hope you enjoyed that week 1. It wasn't even on your roster. Next. This one comes in from @Rishi_Bhakta. Dalvin Cook for David Montgomery. Like, what did you go through to think that you should trade Dalvin Cook, one of the best running backs in fantasy football, for an overhyped rookie on a bad offense? I mean, I know we want to talk about process over results in fantasy. There was no process that you could have undertaken with this trade for the result not to be you look like a damn fool. Next. This one comes in from @such_A_Richard. I really hate your Twitter handle, bro. Someone in our league traded Mike Evans for Marquise Brown and Shady McCoy. If you were one of the people out there who traded away Mike Evans, not traded for Mike Evans, you suck at fantasy football. I don't know how to say it any nicer than that. I'm sorry, I really am. Mike Evans was the clearest buy candidate coming out of the first month of the season because the only thing that was wrong with him was he wasn't getting the fantasy points. And I know you clown sheep out there just want to be like, well, it doesn't matter if the bottom line is bad. Well, sometimes you got to look beyond the bottom line and realize that Mike Evans was getting the targets, he was getting the air yards, he was getting the opportunity in an offense with a quarterback that he was familiar with. Even with Chris Godwin breaking out, Mike Evans was still getting that raw volume. The production was always destined to come. Sure enough, it has. He's been a stud of late. And meanwhile, you traded for a rookie receiver who got hurt for a large stretch of the year and a running back who is literally turning to dust before our very eyes. Next. This one comes in from @FantasyJunkie24. Someone traded Cooper Kupp for Ito Smith. You did what for what? You know, sometimes I think about my job as a fantasy football writer, an analyst that's supposed to cover the game and hopefully give you advice that helps you make better decisions. I'm not taking accountability for your decisions. Those are your decisions. But I'm supposed to help. And then I look at stuff like this and I realize some people, they can never be helped. Next. This last one comes in from Dan Hernandez, and it's, I offered someone Cooper Kupp and Chris Carson for Alvin Kamara. Glad they rejected it. I think this is an appropriate place to end on because sometimes the best trade is a trade you don't make. Maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe you should just be wheeling and dealing. Right after your draft gets done, trade 3 guys for 2 guys and 5 guys for 1 guy, or 1 guy in a defense for a kicker. Maybe I've got this wrong. But look at you. You could have ended up with Alvin Kamara, which you would have loved at the time, but that didn't really work out. Instead, you got Cooper Kupp, who's been consistent pretty much all the time until last week, and Chris Carson, who's been a workhorse, all because someone didn't take your trade. Maybe the best thing to do is just find happiness with the players that you have. I'm quite sure that's not company approved advice, but just make sure you're active all year in your fantasy football teams. That is going to do it for the Week 11 edition of the Fantasy Football Survival Kit. Look, we had some fun today, right? We got to laugh at some people that made some really unfortunate trades. I'm sure they feel terrible. We feel better. That sounds like bullying. So what we're going to do now is, going forward, we're gonna focus on the fantasy playoffs, how to win your league here in the last few weeks of the regular season. And the best way for you to do that is, of course, watching these little videos, but also going to Facebook and join our group, the Fantasy Football Survival Kit, where there is great dialogue on how to save your season before it slips away and the year ends.